Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand spanking new year. It's 2023. We're feeling a lightness in the air. We got goals to accomplish, things to do, reflect on the year behind, and let's just make it a good one. How are you doing, Sav? How are you doing over there?
I'm doing fantastic. I am ready for a new year, new me. You know, honestly, do you think it gets old when you hear that saying where you're like, because there's something I don't like about New Year's resolutions, because sometimes like you'll see, I know I'm guilty of this. I've seen friends and family do this. Well, they'll be like, have this big New Year's resolution. And I think goals are amazing, but they'll have something like, this is how I'm going to execute it. And then always within like 2 weeks, they fall off or I fall off. Maybe I'm like, I'm going to be more stretchy. And then I stop stretching. So it's always comical as a fitness girly, because that like first month is so packed at the gym, and then it cools down a little bit.
It's classic. Like I was talking to my friend Joe about this the other day. It's like you can almost not even say New Year's resolutions anymore because we know they don't work. You can't just change who you are 24 hours. Like you're thinking that person who you were a couple of days ago wasn't aware of the things you are now. Like there's no magical thing that happens. But there is something I think you can utilize a brand new year of kind of reassessing where you're at, where you're going. And it's a nice stop point, which we're going to talk about. That's the whole point of the episode. But I do realize, I think the biggest issue with, as you're saying, New Year's resolutions is that people think they can switch who they are as a foundation, like switch everything overnight. And that is impossible. But can you start making changes to, I think we all have that like ideal person we wish we were, the like elevated version of ourselves. And we're forever just kind of trying to aim to be towards that, but you can't become that person overnight. And that's where New Year's resolutions are wrong. But that's what we're here to solve today.
I agree. And I think there is a great sentiment. Like I think it is amazing to like strive for that, because there's also the other spectrum of people that are like, I don't need to change anything. I like, whatever, who cares about New Year's? And it's like, at the end of the day, we all can improve. We all should change something in our life. And it, you know, whether you're acknowledging it because the New Year's coming up or not, I think is great, because I think we can get really stuck in our ways and not work on our self-improvement.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get comfortable.
I think it's just human nature. Like the classic, you know, someone quits their job, retires, and then they die a couple of years later because they no longer have purpose. I don't really think it's always purpose. Sometimes I think purpose can be a great thing. You have something bigger than yourself to work towards. That's one motivating thing. But I think a really big motivating thing is just growth. Humans just like it's our nature. That's how you would survive. Just keep getting better at something. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to change who you are and everything as a person, but you can get a little bit better in some ways, and that can just improve your quality of life, and it's satisfying. And like I think that's part of the good life, is like putting in work, reaping the benefits, getting a bit better, enjoying that progress. Like that's all. It's cheesy. That's what us humans are meant to do.
And finding what you like, because sometimes I think we also can be too scared to go after what we want. And you'll never know if you'd like being a runner, or maybe you'd meet your future spouse when you ran a marathon, when before you'd never do that, right? Like it just opens up so many doors, and I think it's so exciting. Even if it's just a new year, the future is exciting, especially when you have an excuse to focus on what you want to accomplish.
Exactly. So speaking of focusing, let's just jump into some steps we think and our thoughts on the New Year's resolution. So we broke it down into like 3 little categories. We're going to call it New Year's resolution because let's not just change the name to change the name, but it's kind of a little bit of an adapted and a more realistic way of approaching, looking back on last year and looking forward into New Year. And if you got some goals, this might be a way to help you accomplish it. So, number 1, this is where I do like January 1st, week up, a couple days after. It's just a really good time to reflect. I think it's the one time a year you have a derivative 1 year to look back at, and you can actually ask yourself, like, what did I do well? What am I proud of? What could I have improved on? Like, I think we don't even give ourselves a pat on the back until you look back and you're like, wow, I actually did so much this year. Maybe I paid off my student loans. Maybe I just started going to yoga. Maybe I fell in love with someone. I made a new friend. Like, there's so much you did. And also there's a lot of lessons that you're like, you know what? I did self-sabotage in that. So I think it is a great time to reflect. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to make you reflect right here on the podcast. So I thought, what was your biggest accomplishment of 2022?
Wow. That is a loaded
Heavy.
question.
Loaded.
Well, I feel like also the past couple years, my life has just been a lot of change.
Yep.
But in the best way possible, right? Like I had the previous year moved from Orange County, California, to where I'd lived there for 4 years and loved it, to Miami, Florida for 6 months, to now Puerto Rico. And within that, I've been planning a wedding. I have bought a house with my future husband, a car. I've lost family members. Like there's just so much that's gone on. So I'd say we lived in New York for the summer. You know, it's like truly craziness. But I'd say, I don't know, maybe this is really broad, but I would say maybe my greatest accomplishment is adaptability. I feel like
I love that.
Yeah, in the sense of like I've really learned to swing with the punches, and I've really worked this year on getting comfortable with myself and my company, and focusing on what I do love about myself and what I want to improve on, because for the longest time I like didn't really have time to sit down and figure out what I wanted, or have that silence because I was always with friends. Where now that Michael and I have been moving, that's something we have always prioritized, is like we want to travel, we want to experience new cultures, and what comes along with that is like you're not going to make friends right off the bat, so it's a lot of alone time. And I've really learned to love being alone, in the sense of like being comfortable, and I don't know, I don't get lonely like I used to. So maybe that's my accomplishment. What is yours?
That's great. I think my biggest accomplishment, I guess I kind of have two, and I would bunch them as in like just creatively doing what I've always wanted to, and I really just feel in a good place. Like I'm not just like creating to create, or like even just saying like I'm feeling a lot more confident calling myself like an artist or a creative. And like what it comes down to two things, like just my skills as a DJ. I feel really confident. Like I feel like if you know we were at a bar and people were like get on the decks, I'm like easy, let's get on there, and I feel really confident like in that sense. And I got my first paid DJ gig this year, so that was awesome. And then in terms of YouTube, I think I really started shifting away from just like, obviously I still, sometimes it's fun to do trendy things, but not just doing what other people or brands or things I was working with are telling me to do. And even if it like ruffled some feathers, I'm like, this is why I created YouTube, and this as well. And so I started my wellness diary series and, you know, my running series, and both of those have been like, I feel so good. And that's like the work I've always wanted to do. And it's nice to know the audience has, for the most part, enjoyed it. So I feel I've really kind of just creating art I want to create, and like it's fun. It's not like that deep, you know what I mean? This is fun. Like every day I want to just like, I made a remixed Christmas Carol songs like the other day, and then like I did I made AI create me a workout. It was just like fun videos, and I think it's a nice place to be. I'm really feeling like creatively free and open in the best way possible. So that's my biggest
Oh, I love that. I think that's awesome. And I mean, you have been, how long have you had this career? How many years?
I think I've been full-time 3.5 years.
Yeah, so that's like if you think about it, a huge step is like you finally feel like you can produce what you want to produce, right? And like kind of play more into how you want to evolve. Because at the end of the day, you probably don't want to be Keltie that makes challenges forever. That's not going to make you happy forever. Yeah.
And I think that's learning. That's part of like the creative process, is like creating what you want, and then eventually people like, and then people like it, but you don't really like it, and people are also growing tired of it. So you have to reinvent. And I think that's just forever a cycle. And the best artists are those ones who just forever reinvent while staying true to themselves. And I'm like kind of in that stage, and like accepting that stage, and I'm like trusting myself. But enough about me. What was your biggest lesson of 2022?
Ooh. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. My biggest lesson? I don't even know. Can you go first? I'm like, my biggest lesson?
I'll say trusting myself. For many things of like, whether it be if everything goes wrong, I'll figure it out, or that my thoughts and ideas are valid, and that like, you know, even if 100 people are telling me all this and this, like if I truly feel it in my gut and it's something I really want to do, and like obviously you have to listen to other people, but just like trusting yourself, and even if it's going wrong, that like you have the capability of getting through it, even if shit's hitting the fan, and just like knowing what you're capable of. I think it's just that, just trusting my own gut and abilities.
Okay, I like that. Okay, I got mine. I think mine would be, and it's probably because I'm in a transitional period with, I'm going to get married in 2023. So so for this year, I mean, we've always been like a team because we've been together 7 years. But this year, it was really eye-opening, like, to own a house together, to own a car officially together. Like, I think maybe my lesson this year was learning that, which I'm sure a lot of people that are in these kinds of relationships can relate to, that's no longer just you. You have a team to think about. And I think I was so used to being independent. I mean, I grew up with a single mother, to where, like, it was just me for a really long time, to where sometimes Michael would be like, Sav, like, you have to also include me in these decisions, and hey, like, just next time maybe chat with me before you book this flight so I know that, you know, like, I just literally didn't even think about that kind of stuff. I was just like, yeah, I'm just a very independent person. So I think, which I still am, he still likes that, but I think this lesson of this year with us buying a house, moving to New York for a couple months together, is just like, okay, this is going to be a team going forward. We, of course, have our own lives, our own friends, our own hobbies, our own trips, but try to be more considerate of, like, including him in some decisions.
I like that. I like it. As someone who's also independent girly, moved out at 18, I realized that, like, when you got to fend for yourself for so long, you're just like, you just figure it out. You don't really think anyone cares to notice. You know what I mean? It's not like you don't want to include them. You're just like, oh, no, you don't even think people are paying attention, at least for me.
Yes. No, I mean, for a really long time, Michael has always, like, come to me for everything, whether it's even something as small as him planning a trip. And I never did. And he was always like, hey, like, have you ever noticed I talk to you about these things, but you just kind of go ahead, you tell me, you don't necessarily like have a conversation about it. And I was like, oh, it did not even occur to me that it would bother you, but it makes sense because now we have a dog, and now we have bills and a house, and, like, you know, we have to put each other first. So that's probably a lesson that I had right before marriage.
That's good. I like that. It's actually just a little bonus lesson. I was like, that's a big one I learned is that, like, I don't know if it's similar, but it just made me think of, like, my voice is valid and that people want to hear, in the sense that, like, you know what I mean? When you're independent, like, I used to, like, oh, I'm going through it, no one wants to hear. And, like, whether it be good or bad, or, like, people don't want, like, I have this thing that if I text people, I'm annoying them. If I call people, I'm annoying them. Like, I don't know what it is, my existence annoys people. And I'm really trying to work through that, of realizing, like, if they love me, they probably want to, like, hear how I'm doing, or hear about accomplishments, or hear about the bad things, because I'm obsessed with the people I'm close to. I want to hear they could update me all day, and I'm like, I don't have time to respond, but I want to hear it all. And realizing the reverse versus, like, and I think it comes off to other people that, like, I'm not thinking about them, that I don't care, when it's the opposite, that I care so much that I don't want to annoy them because I'm scared they'll hate me. So learning that, like, and I'm trying to just, whether it be just update people and just be like, my existence isn't a burden. And I think when you're independent, especially, you're, for whatever reason, grow up thinking your existence is a burden, which is funny. But maybe that's the Canadian in me.
No, I mean, I think that's fair, because, I mean, my mother is the same exact way to a T, and so is my grandmother. And they both were, I mean, my grandfather died, you know, my grandmother was young, so, like, I think she was 50. So, like, I think you're totally right. When you are independent to some extent, you do have this weird feeling, because, like, you don't have that person that usually checks in on you. So I think maybe you automatically assume, like, you're bothering someone when you're really not. Because if you think about it, have you ever had a friendship that, like, they'll check in on you, and so you can always count on them checking in the sense of, like, catching up, but you don't really reciprocate it, so then it can fizzle out, because then they think you don't care, but in reality, you are like, oh, well, you're always the one that, you know, reaches out. So I thought, you know, it was when you were free, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. It's a tough line, and you almost have to have those conversations with people in your life of, like, you're sitting there and be like, oh, I know you're busy, I don't want to annoy you. But then those people are like, wow, she never checks in. And I think just having that open dialogue of, like, with a friend, be like, no, like I know you're busy. Like I don't want to bother you or something like that. Or like, oh, you're texting. I think it's just, we can't read what's in each other's minds. Like communication is so important. Oh my God.
And if they're on your mind, always message them. My
Yes.
friend Ashley and I have like a weird telepathy with that, where we will message each other like if we have a dream about each other and be like, hey, I had this, like one time she messaged me, like sent me a voice memo and was like, I had this dream. It was so weird. We were on a beach and you were like, I don't want to be your friend anymore. You were like, I don't want to be friends with anybody. And she was like crying and she was like, why? I don't understand. We're so close. Of course, I have no idea where she had that, but she's like, are you going through something right now? And I actually was. And I was like, actually, yes, I'm feeling extremely, it was a certain event that was going on that I felt extremely left out, you know? So I was like, no, actually I've been really upset and I haven't really talked to a lot of people about it. So then I talked to her. So even yesterday, she popped up in my head and I just like reached out and was like, hey, how are you doing? Like, I miss you. And I think it's as simple as that. And then do voice memos, FaceTime, whatever, because you want to keep those friends.
The world works in weird ways. How many times I've like been thinking of someone and boom, they text me. Like it's just, I don't know what that is, but there's something there that if you're looking at a sign of this camera I look at and I was like, oh, this camera reminds me of Sav because I always record a podcast with her. Text you because you never know. Like, you know what I mean? Just do more of that. That's our New Year's resolution. Do more of that. When you're thinking of someone, just shoot them a text. Everyone appreciates it.
Definitely. Even if they're going through something, to let them know that you're there for them. I have a couple friends that are going through something right now, and like I always check in on them and shoot them texts, even though I know like I'll get a response back maybe in a couple weeks when they feel ready. You know, or I'll be like, hey, whenever you're ready, whenever you want to catch up, let me know. FaceTime. We don't have to talk about X, Y, and Z. We can just talk about life, you know, but to at least, you never know what people are going through. And just for them to know someone still cares, I think is so important.
And you don't have to solve people's problems. People don't want their problems solved, actually, most of the time. People want to know, you know, they exist. You know what I mean? It's really simple. And so sometimes all that takes is just like thinking of you, sending you a virtual hug. Hope you're doing well. I'm here if you need anything. You know, sometimes that's all you need, just to know you're not this ambiguous blob going through the world and no one knows you exist. Yeah. So we'll go on to number 2 of our 3-step to reinvent. You're just having a good year, or just the New Year's resolution season, not series. Number 2, visualize, whether it be a specific goal. I like the idea of kind of visualizing, like I call it my ideal self, because it's not anything crazy. It's still a version of me, but it's kind of like every facet of what I hope. And then I kind of look at that and break it down to a bit more specific goals. So I can go on to mine, but what do you use to like visualize or goal plan or just look into the future?
I do. I'm not one to physically write out goals. What I do is Canva, because Canva's our bestie. And I'll basically make a folder within Canva of different categories that I want to focus on for that year. So last year what I did was health. Then I did like business. Then I did relationships. Then I did personal self-help. And I'll usually have images that I want associated. So for health, I was like, I want to prioritize being more natural with what I'm eating. So then maybe I would include like a photo of a Buddha bowl that I used to be really, really good at being very natural and like whole foods based. And I've gotten lazy with that. So that was something I wanted to prioritize. So that's kind of what I do. I'm more of a visual, not necessarily write it out. What are you?
I like that. Mine's a little extra, but there's the extra and the smaller version because I'm just a writer and a visual and a creative, so I really enjoy this. So don't expect to do this much. Just realize this is just kind of like a form of therapy for me. But I have my iPad, do it all. I can't even remember the app I use. I use a few, but it's just a drawing app, like a journaling app, a basic one. And each year I make like a little notebook and I'll name it. Like this year it's called my Pink Era. Whole story behind that we don't have to get into, but then I'll just have a little table of contents of the different foundations. So whether it be my health, wealth, social, style, whatever. And under each of those, I might write out a goal. If they're a bit more like finance, it's a bit easier. But then I'll just put some photos because, like I said, I'm a very visual person, so I like to have photos because it reminds me better than like just writing a number or something. And so I'll just kind of make that, and it's very rough and scrapbooky. But then me and my friends have a tradition each year that we all make a classic vision board, and we all send it to each other. And it's kind of fun because every blue moon, someone will achieve a milestone, and it'll be like, wait, that was on your vision board. And we'll go look back at it, or at the end of the year. It's kind of fun to reflect on. Like, I had one friend, and she went through a phase. She was really kind of got into designer things, and she really liked it. And she had a couple designer pieces, and she got one or two of them. But it was really interesting. By the end of the year, she kind of got over materialism, and so it was actually really fun back to realize like, that's such a funny progression of like, that's what was so important to me. Now it's so much more important, like doing things and being with people, and like just seeing that. So it's just a fun little thing we do each year and reflect on it. But in that my pink era, for example, I'm doing this year, I'll take all those photos from it and then just mesh that together in one vision board, and then I send that to my girlfriend. So that's kind of, I'll probably post it somewhere and I look back, but I also don't make it, I'm not someone who's like staring at it every day. I kind of wish I was, but I'm just like, I think in your subconscious, once you do it, you write out the goals, it's kind of in that subconscious, and you don't really have to necessarily reflect back on it every single day. But some people like that, but that's what works for me. It's a fun little, I always have a reading week from the 26th to the 1st that I kind of half take off, and I focus on doing that, and it just rejuvenates me starting the new year, and like it helps realign me. Do you know what I mean? Because I think you kind of get pulled in, people telling you should do this and you should do this and you should do this, and if you kind of take that step to just visualize your ideal self or your goals or whatever, it just allows you like, I don't stop wasting energy in that. This is what I really want to do. So it's more of like a realignment versus a changing your whole entire life.
I like that. Kind of revisiting like your values and if they've changed or not. I like that. I think that's cool. And I like that you share it with your friends. That way it kind of is some form of accountability.
Is just fun, and it also helps like your friends support you, because there's stuff you don't even realize is so important to your friend, and then suddenly you realize they're like, they're graduating this year, and that's a really big deal for them. Like, how can I be there for them, and like vice versa. So it's just a fun thing, and even as simple as it gives great gift ideas when your friends post a little sign, you're like, look, let's all get that her for Christmas. There's little things. So don't trust me. I started with my friends like 3 years ago, and I was like, this is so cringy. But like we all secretly love it, and it's so cringy, but it's also like, it's so fun to do together. And yeah, and it's cool because like everyone's artist. Like, for example, my friend Alexis is into flowers, and she's pink and really girly, and it's really nice to see like her visualization. It's really like that, versus I'd be a lot more of like a minimalist kind of vibe, and like that kind of bit more like earthy tones with a few little girly things. And then my one friend is really like neon and zebra print, and so it's just fun to actually see the reflection of like people in that way. Thank you. The number 3. So you have the goal. You reflected back. How'd you actually make it happen? I like the idea of reverse engineering. So I'll kind of briefly mention, and I'll see how you do it. So I think let's just run a marathon, because it's such an easy thing to think of. You've never run before. You want to run a marathon. You don't just start running half marathons the next day. You reverse engineer to the simplest thing possible. So in my mind, you're like, okay, I have to run, however, is it like 26 miles? Is that a marathon? Yeah, 26 miles. So you're like, 52 weeks. What's really easy? Let's just start this week if I can run 1 mile at a time. And that would be easy. That I can accomplish. Then in a couple of weeks, try and run 2 miles at a time. Now, obviously, you have a specific running program, but I'm just talking in general goals, whether your goal is to drink 4 liters of water or you're drinking half a liter. Just start with adding 1 extra cup. And then in a couple of weeks, I think it's just reverse engineering to that goal. So if your goal is to graduate with a science degree, the first step is just reverse it back to, it's like, just apply. Once you apply, wait for acceptance. So just reverse it to a simple, bless you. Reverse to as simple as possible. So do you have any tools of just actually getting, because I think that's the biggest thing. People are really good at making goals, but how do you actually make the goals happen? Do you have any little tips there?
Yeah. For me, if it is a tangible goal, like where it's like I, want to run this amount of miles, or I want to, I'm trying to think, hit this certain amount with my income, whatever it may be, I feel like you can, when it's that specific, break it down to, like you said, where, okay, hypothetically, if you're trying to change your body, maybe you're into bodybuilding, how are you going to do that? So your workouts that you need. Okay, well, what are those workouts going to be? Okay, now you know the workouts. What days are you going to do them? Okay, now you know the days. So what time are you going to do them during the day? Okay, now you know that. So how are you going to pack for the gym? How are you going to get to the gym? So like, I'm somebody that will break down my goal in the most nitty gritty thing, because then I'll revisit this. And if I'm not seeing change, it's right in front of me to be like, oh, the reason why you haven't seen, you know, your goals alter or change is kind of how I view it, at least, is like, okay, this is an equation that I just have to follow, and if I follow this, it'll work. And if it's not, within a month or so, 2 months, 3 months, then I alter it a little bit. But like, I think for me at least, this helps, because I used to make a goal, a broad goal, and then I wouldn't know how to achieve it, which I think a lot of us can relate to. So we just be like, oh, okay, I want to get fit for New Year's, and then you'd be like, okay, well, what does that mean? What do you mean? Do you want to build muscle? Do you want to lose fat? Okay, now how are you going to do it? Like, how are you going to change? Because obviously, like, when you have a goal, you have to change some aspect of your life. You have to change your day to day. And so for me, it just helps kind of pinpoint it and like, oh, this is how I change it. Otherwise, I'll just fall back into what I'm doing.
For sure. I know it's classic and we've probably all heard it, but I think it's called the SMART goals. So it's like the 5 steps to
that's
achieve.
Literally what I refer to.
But it's S for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for relevant, and T for timely. And like, as long as your goals are that, and like, so just keep that in mind when you're making them. It's basic and cliche because it's true. And also the biggest hack I've ever had is, how many of us are addicted to something? We all have something. Some are very bad addictions, and some might be that we watch Netflix every night. It's little simple things. And you, as soon as you realize you have that capability to be addicted to healthy things or things that will get you closer to your goal, that's why I'm a big fan of my 30-day challenges. And I always recommend it because it's debated anywhere from 26 to 66 days to make a habit. But if you can reverse engineer your goals to something really simple that you do every day for a couple weeks, really small, and then it becomes a habit, then you can just continuously add on from there. And that's how you create a lifestyle change, because it's all habits, and habits really become part of your routine. Just like brushing your teeth. You're not sitting there every night staring at your toothbrush like, oh, should I brush it? Should I not brush it? You just brush it. And that's kind of the goal, I feel, to actually do everything. And so versus being like, I have to start a whole new workout program, 0 to 100, do it fully for 3 weeks, but it's not actually attainable in your current lifestyle. You'll feel burnt out and you'll quit, and then you'll resent it. Versus you're like, I'm just going to walk every day for 10 minutes. That becomes a habit. Then you make it 15, and then it grows. And like, slow and steady, make it a habit and build. And it doesn't have to be even 30 days. Here's a little hack I also do. Say you want to run every day for 30 days. You don't really have to run every day. Run 3 days. The other 4 days, just go on a walk, but at the same time. Or like, I've done stuff like that. You're like, oh, I want to do sit-ups every single day. Maybe the 4 days a week, you just go stretch at that time. Just like schedule it into your schedule until it becomes a habit.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great point.
Do you have any things you're trying to implement into the new year? Any little fun goals like that you want to work towards? We'll see if we accomplish for the next year. Doesn't have to be the full thing, 1 or 2 though.
Unpopular opinion, I do not like to share my goals.
I expect that.
Yeah, it's just something, like, it's not like I'm hiding them, but for me, it's like I will work extremely hard if like it's kind of my little baby.
Yep.
And then, I don't know, some people they like people to know because then it holds them accountable. For me, it's more daunting. So
yep.
Guys, stay tuned. I'll let you know maybe next year what the goals were. But that's kind of how I roll with it, is I've just never, I don't even really let Michael see it. He can see my vision board, but when it's my goals,
yep.
And then once I achieve it, I'm like, look, this is what I had. It's more, I think, just me against me.
I like that.
What's your take on it?
Well, I will say there's 2 thought patterns, and you just have to be self-aware enough. The one thought pattern is you tell people they'll hold you accountable. Say it like, for example, this is great. Fitness is easy. You tell your personal trainer your goals. Your personal trainer will keep you accountable. Now, that same person might go post their goals on social media. what happens? You get a big dopamine hit because a lot of people are like, congratulations, proud of you. And you get all the sense of dopamine and accomplishment before you actually do it. And because of that, you're less likely to accomplish the goal because you already got the reward before you put in the work. So actually the best personal trainers, and they're annoying, are the ones who you're like, I want to be able to do 100 push-ups. They're like, okay, cool. This is what you do. And they give you nothing off the bat. And you're almost like, where's my congratulations? That's a good sign of a personal trainer, because they'll, in 2 weeks, when you start doing it, they'll be like, good job. I see you've been attainable, because they want you to keep doing it. So don't ask for the dopamine spike for just making the goal. Wait for it after you actually put in some work. So that's why I'm like, sharing goals, as long as like, don't share it with people who congratulate you. Just share it with people that'll keep you accountable. So I'm actually going to do one, just because I won't say my actual career goals, but I want to be held accountable. I need to learn how to speak Swedish. I spend half my time in Sweden and I can say like 10 words. I need to learn to speak Swedish. I don't need a congratulations. It's the bare minimum of being someone in a different country, but I need to be held accountable. So this time next year, I have to say a couple sentences in Swedish on this podcast. And there we go. Yeah. No, you're not excited. You're like, I'll wait for it. No excitement.
Well, I'm like, Keltie, you could speak gibberish to us and we'd be like, yep, you nailed it. Because half of us don't speak Swedish.
I'm trying to think of I almost said say in a different language. I was like, I'm on the spot. I can't think of anything. I know some things. Barn. Barn means kid. Fun fact. Here, I'll leave you with a fun fact, then I'll let you go. Guess it. Very far from that. But guess how you say speed. Guess how they spell. They don't say it like that, but how they spell speed in Swedish. Fart. So there's signs everywhere in Sweden just saying, because like speed limit, just fart. There's fart signs all throughout Sweden. And also, last one, six is sex, S-E-X. But also sex is S-E-X. So six and sex are the exact same thing in Swedish. Riddle me that, folks. Riddle me that.
What if you have a question? Can I see the six?
Can I see the sex?
Boys. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, people would be confused.
So there's signs saying sex and fart all over Sweden.
Wow, you need to take a picture and send it to me so I can put it on the podcast.
Done.
Okay. Perfect. Well, shall we wrap up here? A little short, sweet, and simple one.
Yeah, we just wanted to help you set some groundworks to, I think a lot of you are planning the New Year's. Here's a good way to just reflect, plan, and, make some things happen. And we'll reflect back this time next year of where it went. And just don't put too much pressure. Start as small as possible. And trust me, you will actually see results versus don't flip your life upside down. You'll crash and burn in 3 weeks like we've all done. Do you know how many times I told myself I learned to do a handstand only to quit after 2 weeks? Infinity times. Infinity times. Because I still haven't done it. Infinity stone. And also, if you have any stories, feel free to DM us and be a part of our confession sessions. We have those every few episodes. So just DM us any funny stories you got and be featured on the pod. Okay, bye.